So Hearthstone's got a new patch coming out like now, and it's going to bring with it some changes to lots of cards in standard format, and some Battlegrounds changes, and some Duels specific changes as well, which we'll talk about in this video. Kick things off, here's a little dev comment to set the context. The meta's in a pretty healthy place right now. A lot of players seem to be enjoying the post mini set meta. So we're not trying to be too disruptive with this round of changes. We're making some smaller adjustments to tone down a few emerging meta outliers and to give a little more power to some of the mini set cards that have not gotten much attention. And I think that's a fair assessment. I haven't been playing a ton of standard, actually climbed a little bit this week. I've mostly been focusing on duels right now for my Hearthstone gaming, but that's what I've heard from a lot of folks. It's mostly Lady Steno, I think, that's creating a lot of kind of ire and frustration when there is any, but otherwise I think people are generally okay with this meta. That said, the power outlier in most ranks, as far as I can see, is pure Paladin landing pretty much alone in tier 1 at Diamond to Legend. So a couple changes to pure Paladin seem necessary, and kicking it off is the Purator going from 5 to 6 mana. Of course, this card is just hyper efficient card draw, drawing countless cards, frankly, completely reloading your hand very often for only 5 mana while still developing a decently sized body that even sometimes occasionally has some like menagerie synergies as well, depending on your build as a mech itself. And in particular, you know, with light rays in pure Paladin, this can actually just be a big board dump when you play it as well, just getting a couple 0-cost 5/5s to go alongside it that it draws immediately. So not only like resource generation, but actually sometimes board development and swings on top of that by developing 3 straight taunts. So pushing this back to 6 is going to slow that down a little bit. That might mean sometimes the Paladin gets a little thin on turn 4 or 5, you know, kind of running out on resources, fizzling a little bit until they land the Purator on 6, giving other decks a little more space perhaps to get ready for that development, or just in the game before that sort of thing happens and they get those taunts down. Otherwise, of course, just delaying those resource reloads just to give you more time to stay alive against a more aggressive pure Paladin build as well. So I think that's a big change. I mean, frankly, the light rays might get more playable at 0 with this coming down a turn later, but of course you could have just played this on turn 6 before anyway if you had a curve going well. So I do think this is a meaningful change, but I also think this card stays really good. I think it's still super efficient at 6. I don't think it breaks the curve of the deck or anything. The deck doing really powerful things early into this is still going to be a line that makes sense. So we've also got the Disco Maul. This one could perhaps be a little more disruptive in my mind. It's going from 2 to 3 mana, and it's getting a small attack buff going to 3 attack as well. So bringing a little attack in line. We've seen this a lot, which I think is a cool change. Anytime they nerf a weapon or have a 3 mana weapon in particular, it seems like they really want it to be at that 3 attack spot. That makes a big difference for clearing stuff on board at that stage of the game. A lot of 3 health stuff floating around, frankly, even on turn 1. So this will make this a little bit better at managing those early boards, and also a little bit better at pushing face technically, but of course slowing down the highest impact part of this card, which is that death rattle that scales up. It gives you those crazy hard to deal with buffs, and by pushing this back a turn, that's going to push back the speed at which you're scaling it as well. It's going to require, of course, bigger mana commitment up front to get that scaling happening. So I think that is actually a much bigger 1 mana change, for instance, than the Purator is. This happening from 5 to 6 doesn't feel as significant as this going from 2 to 3. Again, I actually still think this is a solid weapon at 3. So I don't think that this goes away necessarily. And the actual most popular build of pure Paladin right now doesn't actually run a lot of 3s anyway. It's not like Funk Fins and stuff. It's got Boogie Down and Muckborn Servant, and a lot of 2 mana plays that might just be able to squeeze in under this anyway. So I don't know how disruptive this will actually feel in the current context of pure Paladin, but I do think, generally speaking, a card going from 2 to 3 is a significant change. So still good, but this one I think will be felt. On top of that, we got Feast and Famine going from 1 to 2 mana here. Again, doubling the cost is a really significant change. This card in particular being used in pure Paladin in combination with Horn of the Windlord, the new Wind Fury weapon, to potentially push out lots of crazy damage. You can easily scale your Windlord up to 6 or technically even 9 damage, and then hit twice with it for 18, which is really scary. So increasing the commitment there, I think, is nice. Delaying that another turn is nice. That all feels good. This is kind of going to have some, you know, negative effects on a slower Paladin decks that probably weren't abusing this card in any sort of unhealthy way for burst damage, but were using it for survivability because of its lifesteal aspect. So kind of sad that things like Control Paladin might lose a little bit here when you could have maybe gone straight at Horn of the Windlord instead of going at Feast and Famine. But I guess this still helps slow down that ultimate problem. In regards to dev comments, I haven't even read these yet. Pure Paladin has been a strong deck for a while now. After this latest patch, we saw a jump in the deck's power to the point where it was now a dominant outlier at all levels of play. Purator is the best card in the deck by every measure, so it was an easy target to change. We expected to still see play after getting toned down a little. Disco Mall has been a card we've had our eyes on for a while. I was surprised it didn't get nerfed last time. And this felt like the appropriate time to act on it. Finally, we've seen a lot of power come from Horn of the Windlord, the Feast and Famine combo, but we can see that Horn of the Windlord isn't a problem in Shaman, so we're adjusting the other half of the combo to make it a little slower overall and less flexible on non-combo turns. I think that's fair to kind of protect Shaman's interests. I would also say that it's not being played in Shaman much or at all that I've seen. So I don't know, maybe that's okay if Shaman lost access to this. There are some very rare totem builds running it, but not much. So next up, I think is a change everybody's going to be excited to see, including myself, particularly in duels. Lady Stheno is going from 2 attack to 1 attack, effectively cutting her damage in half based on at least her base impact. Normally we might say, only losing 1 attack, that's not a very significant change. But of course, as you have successive attacks with this card, that is going to add up to a notable damage fall off. If this is attacking 4 or 5 times, that's kind of like a 4 or 5 damage nerf. So, if you're scaling this up with attack buffs through other mechanisms, obviously this can still get big and can still kill you and preserves a lot of that OTK, but maybe makes the math a little bit harder here and there, lets other decks kind of extend their health or armor totals beyond the threat of Lady Stheno. So for instance, in duels, like she'll still be able to get really big off the crazy buffs in duels and kill you because her effect remains intact, but hopefully that happens maybe a turn or 2 later or something. But there's other changes coming for duels that'll solve that problem, don't worry. Dev comment here, there's been a growing negative sentiment about Spell Demon Hunter, especially the top levels of play. And particularly with the class closing out games in the same way for a long time, there were a few choices for us on which cards to adjust, but Lady Stheno seemed to be the best target to have the biggest impact on play experience and player sentiment. I think certainly a lot of people would have been sad if this didn't get nerfed. So from a sentiment standpoint, it seems like a good change to me, almost regardless of what was the right change from a play standpoint. Sometimes you just have to give the people what they want, which is why I make the videos. Next up, this nerf really surprised me, dude. Hope of Quel'th the Lost is going from 4 attack to 3 attack. And when we saw this teased on the teaser this week, I was like, man, really? I mean, I know it's getting played. I've ran into it a few times in Beast Hunter, like the big kind of Hound Hunter thing. And that's a good deck. It's at the top of tier 2 right now, but number one, is this the card to target that's like never been played before? And would this really be a problem in the future? Because this card's felt pretty slow for a while now. I'm actually just going to read what do they write here. I guess it's only losing 1 attack, though. That's not really much of a change. I think this is like a nerf in quotation, so maybe it's okay. Big Hunter has emerged as another powerful outlier after the mini set additions of Hollow Hound and Star Power. We think the deck is fun and cool, and we want to see players continue to enjoy it, but we also don't want it to become too powerful after the other adjustments this patch. So this is a small preemptive adjustment to shave a little bit of its power, and I would have to say that is definitely a little bit. 2 total damage off of a 6 mana card that's most of its value is probably in its effect. So okay, I'm cool with that. Weird target, but just kind of like throwing a bone against Hunter a little bit. Next up, Pozic. Audio Engineers losing 1 attack, and here it reads, statistically, Pozic is the highest win rate neutral legendary in the game and has been criminally underplayed. As we saw more and more decks trying the card, it became clear it could use a little nudge. So this one surprises me. I think, and who knows, I think this problem would probably go away as we get more cards in a new set. Like typically these kind of neutral legendaries that are sort of non-synergistic general use pieces lose play as you get more and more cards because decks have access to stronger plays that need to fill this 4 mana space or aggressive card space, whatever it is. So I think this problem probably would have gone away, but I'm totally fine with this change as well. Pozic is in almost like 20% of decks right now with solid win rates, so totally a fine thing to nip in the bud if they feel it's necessary. Next up, Crimson Clergy is banned in Wild. This guy can do some crazy stuff in Wild, drawing cards, multiple of these, creating like obscene OTKs with, Radiant Elementals and stuff. So They went ahead and banned Crimson Clergy. Who could have dreamed? Crimson Clergy, a card that's hard to remember in many cases unless you're a wild player nowadays. But for a long time, they're hard to remember its existence. The overheal changed them a lot, but still. Card that's been through the paces. Crimson Clergy is a key enabler to combat deck with play patterns beyond what we want for the format. Yeah, that's fine. That makes sense to me. I mean, Radiant Elementals, you might argue, are a better target in many cases because they're just going to continue to create problems. But I guess this had that potential too for such efficient, cheap card draw. So, okay, refunds coming for those. Next up, we got some buffs, and I think these are pretty exciting to see. Love seeing cards buffed, of course. Rhythm Dancer Risa is going from 5 mana to 4 mana. I still think this card's bad. I talked about this on stream actually earlier when we saw the kind of teasers. I don't think this is enough, right? I think 3 mana is where I think more about this card, because it's like the first one still hurts to me to play at 4. It hurts a little less, yes. I mean, like sometimes you can play like 3 5s for 4. They have really, really good, powerful upsides. I don't know if this is good enough or fast enough. Like, it's still just a big commitment. And I think it takes like 4 or 5 turns of playing this as a 1 mana 3/5 to feel really excited about it. So I don't know, man. Maybe that's not fair to say. Maybe 2 turns of Rhythm Dancer Risa's worth. The question is, like, how many times do you need to play it to make it worth the 4 up front? I don't know, man. Rogue was playing 0 mana 3/5s, and they were pretty happy about that. I don't know. I'm not convinced this gets played at 4, but I guess it has a better chance. 3, I think, would have pushed it into play. Maybe a little scary at 3, I'll be honest. But 4 doesn't feel like it gets there. Fiddlefire Imp is going from 2 health to 3 health. Of course, this does not change the fate of the card in any way or fashion, as far as I'm concerned. If this was going to get played, I think it would have got played at 3/2. I don't think 3/3 changes enough. So I don't see this one getting there. The Remix Dispenser Bot, 4 mana to 3 mana on this one. That's a bigger chance. I honestly have forgotten now what this guy actually does. He like generates you different kinds of resources, as I recall. So there are some like grindier mage decks, some slower mage decks that could maybe use this as one of those value generators in the mid game, just trying to get a body down. Also has mech synergies at 3 to consider as well, so it could be a way to fill in on mechs a little bit. What I'm trying to find the remixed Dispenso bot here, man. Oh yeah, I get 2 random frost spells, I get 2 random mechs, get 2 coins, get 2 random mage secrets. Yeah, I think the coins in particular are kind of spicy on this one, so I don't know. Keep an eye on it at 3. I think some combo decks later could maybe just hold it in hand for the coins versions and do some cool things. So I'm not going to go through all the Battlegrounds updates here. There are frankly just like 1,000, and I just don't play the game enough. I played a few days when it came out this last season, and I won't be able to give you good insights here, but I'm going to scroll through these if you want to pause, and also there will be a link in the description to the full patch notes. Of course, you can just go read these yourself and probably just go play and see all these changes, but it looks like a lot of changes, so some good attention being paid certainly to Battlegrounds, which I think is exciting for Battlegrounds players. I did see Lightfang goes to 4/4. I love playing Lightfang, so it makes me want to play more Battlegrounds. That 2/2 buff's gonna do all the difference. Okay, so duels. Let's talk about some duels changes. These I can, of course, offer context on. Arcane Craftiness now only gonna hit enemy minions instead of enemies. So no longer will this be able to push for a bunch of face damage. They finally made the change we've been asking for. This thing has gotten multiple mana changes, finally limiting it to minions. So this does make it actually a very effective board clear tool if you scale it up, give it bonus damage and stuff, because you're not going to whiff on hitting face. So there will be certain board states where this feels like it just completely melts them, which is kind of cool, but no longer that like scary face damage output off Arcane Craftiness, or just free face damage if you don't have a board, which probably a good change. Roguish Maneuvers is going to 2 mana, so you're gonna have to spend a little bit more if you want this nice combo weapon. I mean, it's been at 2 mana in the past. I think that's fine. Dino Tracking, this got nerfed pretty hard. Now they're bringing back a little bit of power. You're gonna give the beast you discover +1 attack. I don't think that's gonna make any difference for this one. Rarely will that ever stack up to be enough aggression or extra value that it's worth it. Like, okay, my King Crush is a little bigger, sort of thing, is all that's ever going to happen. Signature treasure updates. We got Demonizer. He's now 5 mana and lost some health. And you're gonna get a smaller discount on the demon that you add to your hand. Of course, this still improves during run, so that goes up to more demons later, as I recall. But just pulling down the kind of speed or aggression that this card has an offer. Now, I'll be honest, I have not really seen anybody play this against me, and this is not a card I see often, so kind of surprised to see this here. But if you're trying to limit, you know, aggressive early tempo type stuff, makes sense to me. Chaos Storm is going up to 2 mana. Again, I don't see this one much. I've seen it a little bit more. There's definitely some overload shamans out there with like the quest line trying to do crazy damage and stuff, so that's fine. I don't have any problems with that. Spiked Arms going to 4. This is another one I don't see as much lately, but certainly has had some scary combos in the past, so pushing that to 4 might help. Also, Enraged Warrior's just gotten more and more good cards over time, so maybe keeping that in check. Some of these might even be for things we don't really know that are coming yet, right? It might be some changes in future patches or new cards coming out to get ahead of these. Staking a Claim here, getting a big change. Now this is only going to gain +1 attack instead of +1/+1. So more aggressive, but not more sticky. So easier to clear these boards. Sometimes this did feel like it could snowball really hard and make it impossible to keep up on boards. So I kind of think I like that change. The Beckoning Bicorn card, again, I never see anybody play for like pirates much. But now this is going to add the patches to your deck instead of summon the pirate. Now, functionally, that's probably only going to slow down, I guess, your first patches, because before you'd play your first pirate and get the patches immediately. Now you'll still get a patches when you play your second pirate. So it won't delay you too much, basically. It just kind of slows down the first patches. Then I guess the chain perhaps will continue on future turns as well and delay future ones if you play 2 in the same turn. But if you play 1 per turn, it should nut out about the same. Anyway, a small nerf. I don't think that's crazy. Wither the Weak is now going to only be your first fell spell in a turn instead of a bunch. I think that really hurts this, of course. They already took the damage down on this one pretty significantly, so this is only going to do 1 damage per turn max. That seems bad. That doesn't seem worth it at all to me. So that's just garbage now, I think. Corrupted Fellstone. This used to be whenever you cast a fell spell, you get +2/+2. Now, after you cast your first fell spell in a turn, you give only +1 attack. So again, this really limits the ability for Corrupted Fellstone to scale up, which is good news for Lady Steno. I think that deck was gross, just buffing a Lady Steno to 12 attack or something really easily, really fast, and then just murdering you. So this kind of cuts that scaling in half by making it 1 attack instead of 2. Lady Steno also starting lower, as we talked about earlier. So I think this could definitely limit that. Oh, and also you're only getting it once per turn instead of every single time you cast a fell spell. So sometimes if you don't get the Lady Steno on time, you can't like bank up 6 or 7 fell spells and do it all at once. You'll have to actually scale it up over time. So this will definitely kill that build's consistency. You might still occasionally see some big Stenos here and there, but this wouldn't be something you'd build for nearly as reliably. So really, really big change. Legendary Loot is now going to give you the weapon instead of equipping it. It's going to cost 3 less, but of course, that's much slower still. Most of the weapons you want are like 7-8 mana or something. So this would allow you to play them in the mid game instead of immediately on turn 1, which that's a huge change. I think this was already ultra rare, so this wasn't a problem we ran into much, but this just feels much healthier for the game. That was just way too spiky and game deciding. Ring of Phase Shifting is getting a change. Now, when you add the random legendary minions to your hand, it's going to cost 1 less. So, okay, that feels a little better for sure. When you're getting random resources, they need a little help to feel worth it very often, because they're not going to be synergistic or efficient sorts of plays normally. So that gives it a bit of an edge. That might feel better to take occasionally when you don't have another good pick. Blood Shield is now going to give you 2 health after you spend a corpse in a turn the first time instead of 1. I mean, that's maybe meaningful for some slower decks, right? Over 5 or 10 turns, that does start to add up to a notable amount of health. So yeah, I think that could be an important change. This just didn't do much at all before. Starving here, a big change. Whenever friendly beast dies, draw a card is what it used to do, which could be just an insane amount of card draw. Now, after the first time a friendly beast dies in a turn, so just only once instead of whenever, you draw a minion from your deck and you give it +1 attack. So instead of drawing any card, you're going to draw specifically a minion, and it's going to get a little bit of an attack buff. I think this is notably worse, of course, because only one at a time means you're not going to be able to really notably reload your hand as significantly as, you know, if you played like 5/1/1s or something before you just get a full hand, that'd be insane. Now you're only getting one card out of those 5/1/1s instead of a bunch. Now, notably, you know, there can be one that dies on your turn and your opponent's turn, which can still add up to a significant amount of card draw. So I think this is something people will still take in like aggressive decks that are running Peace. I just don't think it'll be nearly as powerful as it used to be. So next up is Elixir of Vigor. It's going from they cost 3 to they cost 2. So just making these minions you add to your deck cost 2. Frankly, I mean, this is obviously a buff, but I don't think it changes all that much, because honestly, it wasn't the fact that they cost 3 that was holding this back. Like, that still always felt pretty good to play them at 3. It was more about like shuffling bad stuff into your deck and deck construction problems that always caused me headaches for this one. So I don't know. This helps a little, I guess, but I still think most decks won't want to afford that. Ring of Black Ice is getting changed. It's going to cost 2 less now whenever you add them into your hand instead of 1. I think this actually makes this look pretty good. That's a significant cost decrease, and will allow you to play many like small things immediately when you freeze them. So you can build a freeze deck and turn that into a lot of cheap resources. I think that actually looks great. Next up is Incredible Trousers. Before, after you cast a Fel spell, you get 2 Fel Rifts into your deck. Now, after you cast your first Fel spell, you get 2 Fel Rifts in your deck, and you draw a card. So actually, this is an upgrade. Even though it's only 1 Fel spell per turn, getting that card draw on it is actually awesome, because it not only increases the chance of hitting those Fel Rifts, but it's just card draw. Like, a consistent way to build in like an extra 1 card per turn feels great. So I think this looks much better. The Dragonbone Ritual. This before you'd play a dragon. When it died, it would go dormant and revive in 2 turns. Now that same thing's going to happen, but it awakens with +1 attack, which again, I don't think that's much of a change. It all helps, right? It all helps, but that's not going to be a big impact change. So next up, All Shall Serve, it looks like, is getting the same change as the Starving, where you're going to draw the minion from your deck and give it +1 attack. This has already gotten the change where it wasn't all demons. It's only the first time a demon dies. So now it's still the first time a demon dies, but it's going to get that +1 attack. Again, I don't think this like +1 attack design is going to add up to much. Just the way like damage sticks and board sticks and duels, it's a little, but it's not going to scale up very well. So a positive change for a card that got nerfed pretty hard recently, but just not a ton. Also, some card interchangeable updates. King's Bane has been banned. Spectral Cutter, which is not a card. I think they mean Spectral Cutlass, since it's kind of in a similar space as King's Bane, has also been banned. And Heavy Armor has been removed from Treasure Pool. So no more Heavy Armor shenanigans with the weird 10 health. So there you go. Those are the patch notes, guys. Some big changes. I mean, I think standards, those are good changes for standard, you know, meaningful, but limited, not like crazy over the top nerfs or anything. Nobody got nuked from orbit, which probably feels good, but you know, 3 Paladin cards did get nerfs. So that's obviously going to make a difference. That's going to add up to some big changes. Lady Sinnoh's going to feel a little better, hopefully. And, you know, some buffs. I don't think we'll see these cards much off these buffs, but hey, at least they're trying. So curious to hear your thoughts on all these cards below. Curious to hear your thoughts on dual stuff. Thanks so much as always for watching, and until next time, game on.